general questions about the other day. So just a very brief introduction to things that we did. Talking a little bit about C#. Start by going over a little bit on these study guides, and then we'll get into some programming. So I put these study guides up for you. I told you about them the other day. They'll help you prepare for the test, know what's important in this class, that sort of thing. So the first thing, .NET framework. Anybody ever heard of .NET? I bet you have, because Windows is always doing some sort of .NET update. So .NET framework, it's just this big framework of pre-written code that we can have our programs access. And the great thing about it is we don't have to write it ourselves, so we can just use it in our own programs. And that's basically, on a very basic level, what .NET is, okay? Two important components as far as C# are concerned. We have the Common Language Runtime, or CLR, and that's just a fancy name for virtual machine. Anybody not know what a virtual machine is? Anybody? Yeah, virtual machine. There's Jerry Garcia. Virtual machine is anything that's virtual. It means it's like not really the real thing. So like a virtual machine is like a virtual computer running on my computer. So I could run a virtual machine on this computer right here, and it'd be like I have an actual computer running on this computer. And it could be running a different operating system or something like that. So what Common Language Runtime does is it takes care of running our applications. It takes care of allocating memory. It deals with things like, we'll talk later about the stack and the heap. So it takes care of all the details for us. Communicating with the operating system, all that great stuff. And then we also have the base class library, or BCL. Anytime you hear the word library related to programming, a library is just a bunch of pre-written code, okay? Other programmers have written it, so we don't have to do it ourselves. Anybody know of an example? Or can anybody, based on what I did the other day, think of an example of something that might be in the BCL? How about the console class? We did like write line, write, we looked at read key. The console class is a part of the base class library. We don't have to tell the computer how to print stuff to the console. We just need to know how to use write line or write. Okay? Luckily, we don't have to write those ourselves. We just access them from the library. And we'll look at those again here shortly as far as actual examples. Let's see. We talked about source code the other day. We talked about source files. What's the extension? What's the file extension for C#? Everybody got it? Yeah, .cs. So program.cs is the default name for the source file in Visual Studio when we create a C# application. Okay? And the code we write is source code. Now, when I hit that run button in Visual Studio, I probably said something about compiling, right? So our code gets compiled. What that means is that in order for the machine to understand, like let's pull up something. I'll just pull up an example here. So here's some code. This has stuff we haven't covered yet, by the way, so don't worry if you don't understand all of it. All right, so this is high-level stuff right here that's meant for humans. The processor itself in the computer doesn't actually understand this, okay? It has to get translated down to what's called machine language or machine code. That's the language of the actual processor. So this, let's see, my computer has an Intel i7 in it. That i7 has its very own language called machine language, and that's what it understands. And it's nothing but ones and zeros, bits. You ever heard anybody say that computers really only understand ones and zeros? Anything like that? Well, that's true, okay? And I've programmed in machine language. I programmed in all kinds of stuff. And machine language is not fun at all for humans. It's terrible. The machine loves it. But when you're writing nothing but ones and zeros to tell the machine what to do, it's very tedious for humans. So to get this, which humans like, down to machine code, which the machine likes, we do a process called translation, okay? It's like this is English and the machine understands Greek, so we have to have a translator. And a compiler is an example of a translator. So when I say I hit this start button and it compiles my program, that's what I'm talking about. So C# is a partially compiled language. Okay? Compilation, compiling. Translating from high-level language like this down to low-level. Clear? There's a question? It's really simple once you understand it. So let's see. Machine code. So we're gonna, C# compiler is gonna compile down to what's called intermediate language, which is gonna give us an exe. In here, we're only gonna deal with exes. You can also have DLLs. You've probably seen that extension before, DLL. If you've used a computer for any length of time, you've seen the extension exe. So it compiles it down to an exe, which is partially translated. Okay? I can give that exe to anybody running any machine, as long as they have the correct .NET version installed on their computer, they can run my program. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's a Windows computer, if it's a Mac, if they're running Linux, it doesn't matter what they're running. That's one of the cool things about C#. Same thing with Java. Java was actually the first language to do this. So it compiles it down to this generic code, in this case the intermediate language, and then we can give it to somebody on another machine and it'll translate it the rest of the way on their particular machine. So what do you think the benefit of that is? Well, I'll tell you, it's highly portable. Okay? So back in the old days with older languages like C, C++, I mean, I can compile my program, maybe for a Windows-based machine. It'll run on anybody's Windows-based machine, but if I want to give it to somebody running a Mac or running Linux, I have to recompile it, okay, to run on Linux or that Mac. But with C#, again, as long as they have .NET, they can run my program. So portability, okay? So again, these are just terms. You're going to hear me say things like library. You're going to hear me say things like CLR, and just want you to have some idea of what they are. Compiling, translation, things like that. You just need to have an idea when I talk about them. So just terminology. Any questions? All right. Well, great. I'm glad you're all having fun. It gets better. All right, well, let's take a look at Visual Studio then. And let me close this out. Whenever you want to close out, we didn't do this the other day, I don't think, but if I want to close this current project out, I actually go to File, Close Solution, and I'll come back actually to my start page. Huh? Yes, I got the microphone on. Yeah, so don't say anything that you don't want other people to hear. Don't say anything you regret. So Visual Studio. Everybody's should be working in here. I fixed things the other day. If you want to follow along. I'm sorry, it's kind of blurry, but when I get to the actual code, it should look better. I don't know what's going on with this thing. So I'm at my start page. I'm going to create a new project. What did we say a project was? Or what did I say a project was? The folder on the computer for storing all of your stuff, everything that's needed for your program that you're writing. All those files are going to be stored in a project, in that project folder. And I can create a new project by either going to, down here it says create new project, or if your start page isn't showing, you can go to File, New Project, or there's also a button on the toolbar. And you just pick whichever one you want. Now this next dialog box that comes up, remember, it's very important. So hold on just a second. In this left pane over here, you want to select Windows Desktop. Under Visual C#, select Windows Desktop. In the right pane, make sure you're selecting Console App, and then it should say .NET Framework. And then for the name, so it says Console App 1. We want to change that to something more useful. And I'm going to call this Hello World. Although, since I already created Hello World the other day, I'm going to have to name mine Hello World something else. I'll say Hello World 2. So you want to give it a name that's meaningful. So when you look at this 6 months down the road, you know what this project is about. What's the name, the case that I used? Pascal, yeah. Yeah, so we're going to use Pascal case for project names. So that's every new word, they're all bunched together and they begin with, every new word begins with a capital letter. Let's see, that's really all we have to do. Again, if you want to run this off of a flash drive, then you would click Browse and locate your flash drive. Maybe create a folder on it to organize things. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. Any questions about this dialog box? So I'm going to press OK. Wow, that was fast that time. All right, so I'm looking at, you notice my tab up here says program.cs. All right. If you can't see it, trust me, it says that. And then we've got a bunch of code in here. So all this code is the standard code is put in there automatically for us. Don't worry about any of this stuff. And as a matter of fact, don't even mess with any of this stuff up here. Okay. We'll learn about all these things later. Okay. Using namespace, classes. C# is an object-oriented programming language. So classes are very important in C#. We'll learn about those in detail later as well. So, where does my program execution start? That's okay, I don't really want to talk either, but so it starts in main, my main method, right? So we talked about this the other day. Main, that's the name for the method. A method is a chunk of code, a block of code that generally does one task, even though it might have multiple statements inside it. Okay. By the way, when we create our own methods, notice that it begins with a capital letter. Visual Studio will make you do that. It's also Pascal case for the method names. Static void, you don't have to worry about right now. We'll talk about those later. Same thing for string args. You don't have to worry about that. The body of main, of course, is going to be right here. An open and closed curly brace, that actually creates a block of code, and when it's a block attached to a method like this, we call it the body of the method. Okay? And so all the important stuff goes inside the body. Now notice, again, that is an actual curly brace, not a bracket or anything like that. Every opening curly brace has a matching closed curly brace. Notice how I've got these lined up, which it isn't required. I mean, I could actually write it like this if I wanted to. C# does not care about white space, so this is perfectly valid. But Visual Studio is going to format it for you like this. And this is my preferred method of doing it as well. Okay? So, and notice there's also a line, a faint dotted line there to help you match up curly braces. It's actually, missing curly braces is a common error that especially these last, all the time I have students accidentally erase these last curly braces. There's no problem, you just put them back on and then go about your business. All right? So I want to make sure everything that I write is going to be inside main, inside the curly braces. You see my cursor flashing? So that's where I'm going to begin typing. All right? So I'm going to start with console.read key. And why am I going to start with that? Because if I don't have a console read key, remember the console is going to flash up there and go right back away. So in here we want to end every application with every main. We want to put console read key as the last statement in it. There's only going to be one main in every program, okay? One main, and at the end of that main, put console.read key, just like I wrote it there. Okay? So again, console. Any questions? Anybody have a question? So the other day I said console is a class, right? And classes contain methods that do similar things. So all the console methods involve doing stuff with the console. So we have like read key. We talked about write line and write the other day. And there's others as well. And again, we have to write it like this to tell C#, okay, I want to access read key, the read key method here, and it lives inside console. So go look for it there. All right. Now, I could, at any point, click this run button and see what my program looks like so far. You can do that anytime. So every time I do that, it recompiles it. Oh, by the way, too, every time I compile it, it automatically saves it. Students always ask me about that. All right, so there's my console. There's my application running. I see a cursor flashing. Why don't I see anything? Because what? Yeah, there's nothing in it. My cursor flashing, that's literally this read key on line 14 waiting for me to press any key on the keyboard. That's what read key does. It sits and waits for you to press any key, doesn't matter what key it is. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And the console goes away because read key was the last statement. There's nothing after it. Makes sense, right? So once it's done, there's nothing else to do, and the program just quits. All right. So I can do things like I did the other day. If I want to see something on a console, I'm going to use console dot, and I have a choice. I usually use write line. I could use either write. You see IntelliSense. IntelliSense right here comes up, and it gives me some options. So right now it says write line. So if you don't want to finish typing it out manually, you can select one of those. But I'm going to do write line. Okay, that's a good general purpose thing. So write line is a method in the console class. Okay, like all methods, it has a set of parentheses. Let's see what happens if I run it right now. Anybody notice the difference? Yes, exactly. What happened is the write line executed, and it basically just did a new line. I didn't put anything inside the parentheses. I didn't tell write line to print something out, so it did not print anything out. I mean, it just did a blank line, and now read key's waiting. So that's one way to get some space in your programs, actually, is just do a write line with nothing in it. But let's make it more fun. I'm going to come inside the parentheses and send it an argument. I'm passing an argument to write line. That just means I'm giving it something. I'm giving it something that it needs. So I'm gonna give it a string. Remember the other day I said string literals are surrounded by double quotes, and I can literally put whatever I want inside those double quotes, just like so. Make sure you have a closed double quote. Again, string literals in Visual Studio show up in red, or in this case, sort of red, right? Because I'm using a different theme. So now if I compile it, yeah, it says hello world. Okay? And it's waiting for me to press a key. I'm going to do that. And there we go. Let's see, what else can we do? Notice how I have these two lines bunched up together? Okay, so I got write line and read key, line 13 and line 14 respectively. I could do this. Okay, so that's white space. So now line 14 is just white space. I could also do this. I wouldn't do that because that doesn't look good. But this is still valid code. C# doesn't care about that white space. It just ignores it. Okay, but we use white space for humans to make things look nicer, to make things more readable for humans, even though C# doesn't care. Like notice the like this. This is white space too. All this before console write line, that's all white space. C# doesn't care if I do It wouldn't care if I did this. It wouldn't care if I did. Notice I'm not getting any red squigglies. I mean, I could write this entire, every line you see in here, I could put on one single line and C# wouldn't care. But for us, that looks horrible. Okay? Well, watch. I mean, I'll run it and it'll still run just the same. See? So yeah, again, use white space to make things more readable for people. Like so. Indentation. Notice how I have those two lines indented with respect to main. So here's main, here's its curly braces, and there's actually 4 spaces between that dash line and that line. 4 spaces here as well. 4 spaces of indentation is standard in programming. And you're going to indent with respect to what something lives in. Okay? Oh, by the way, you can also press the tab key. Tab is set to 4 spaces by default. So these are indented 4 spaces with respect to main, but notice that main lives inside of class program. Like here's the curly braces for the class, and main is indented 4 spaces with respect to that. And then class, that class is indented with respect to the namespace. Again, you don't have to worry about classes and namespaces right now, but it's the levels of indentation, you know. They're important. They're important to us, okay? Any questions about that? Of course, we can add statements all day long. I really should copy and paste more. I don't know why I'm typing stuff out. Come on. So I can do things like this. I'm just making up stuff. Yeah, you want to learn the shortcut keys like Control-C for copy, Control-X for cut, Control-V for paste. Let's see. And again, I'm just making up things. Inside that string, I can put whatever I want. I mean, I can add right lines all day long. I compile it. And there you go. See, it prints out all my lines. Oh, here's a good example I just thought of. All right, so notice how those are all on different lines. All my printout. So let's change this. So I'm using right line. You'll see the difference between right line and right. So there's right, right, and right. So I'm going to compile it. And notice everything's on one line. That's the difference between right line and right. Right line does an automatic new line return after it prints something. Right does not. The cursor stays on the same line with right. And that's a good example right there. Now, I usually use right when I'm prompting the user for something. So if I say, you know, enter some number, enter your social security number, I'll use right so that what they type appears on the same line after my prompt. We'll talk more about that later when we get to variables, but did you have a question?
No, that's what I was going to ask you. Can you use the two?
Yeah. Yeah, most of the time I use right line, and then right I mostly use for prompting. Okay? That's my general guideline. Let's see. Oh, let's see. We can do this. I don't just have to have read key at the end. And I'm going to put some white space in here to make it look a little better. And for me, I like to group things together. So like I'm going to do a hello world, and then I'm going to do a read key. I'm going to do goodbye world, and then do a read key. And so on and so forth. So I like to do my white space like that. Group statements together that have a, some similar, some relationship. Let's see what happens. So this time it doesn't just print out, oh, I still got writes. Well, that's okay. So this time it doesn't just print out the messages, it stops. Why?
Waiting for keys.
Yeah, read key is just waiting. So now if I press a key, so what happened? What happened here? Something went away. Huh. Wait a minute, let me do something real quick. That was let me change this back to right line because it's going to look messy in a second. All right, so hello world. Now, I'm just going to press a G. Okay? So it prints out goodbye world. Notice that G is there in front of it though. Okay? So that didn't look good. If I press like the space bar, that's a valid key. We won't actually see anything. Well, we'll see a space. All right? Okay? But anyway, so the point is it's stopping at each read key. All right? So now I'm just going to press a key for the last read key, and it's going to go away. All right? So again, I paused it before it printed out each message. I can do that. Now, it showed when I pressed keys, normally I would press the enter key, but when you press other keys, it echoes it on the console. To stop it from doing that, it's real easy. For read key, we pass it an argument of true. So I just put true in. Just like so. Now I'm going to start, compile it. Now I'm going to press G. Notice it did not show up. Okay? And if I press space, notice I don't see it. So it's no longer echoing the key press. Okay? Which in this case is a good thing. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but in this case, I don't want to see those key presses. Any questions about that? All right, we're almost ready to program Pac-Man here. Our own version. No, I'm kidding. We're a long way from that, even. Let's see what else. Oh, how about comments? We put in comments for humans to make things, understandable. Like, you could be working in a team environment where you have other programmers looking at your code. I've been there. And you want to have, depending upon the code and the complexity, having comments to tell people what's going on with it is very helpful. But not only for other programmers, but for yourself. Because you might be looking at your program months down the road and not remember what it was you were trying to do. So having comments telling you is a good idea. So to do comments, I've got single line comments that start with 2 forward slashes. I know you can barely see those. They're green. Comments are green in Visual Studio by default. So 2 forward slashes is a single line comment, and I can write whatever I want. This is a comment. Obviously not a useful comment, but on a single line comment, everything that appears on that one line right after the 2 forward slashes is going to be considered a comment. It's not going to be compiled. It's not going to be considered a part of your code. Okay? As a matter of fact, it gets stripped out when it goes to intermediate language. When you compile it, the comments are stripped out. Not from your source file, just from the executable. All right? So anything now on this line, even if I did this, console.write line, look at that. That's a valid statement, but since it's after that comment, it's not going to be compiled. It's not going to be considered. All right? I can add as many single line comments as I want. I can add multiple lines. So I'm just going to make up stuff. We can do this all day long. Doesn't matter. Okay? Now, comments can also be used for debugging. They're useful as much what I can do. I can come down and let's say I think line 15 is causing some problems. So I just want to take it out for a minute. Well, I'll just do that. Now it's a comment. Okay? When I run it, look at that. Hello world, goodbye world. It completely skipped over the read key. Okay? Everybody got that? Yeah, because I commented out that read key, it just printed. It went from hello world down to goodbye world. All right, but the cool thing is like, okay, now I realize line 15 actually isn't causing any problems. So to bring it back, I just get rid of these two things. So I don't have to take out the whole line. I don't have to take out the code. I just comment it out temporarily, and then I can bring it right back. Okay? That's how you can use comments for debugging. Now there is also a whole debugger in Visual Studio, but that's some very primitive, easy ways to do debugging, simple debugging. There's also multi-line comments that start with, and it's just what it sounds like. I can comment out multiple lines using single line comments, okay? But instead of doing all this, I can just do this. /*, and then to end it, let me see, let me go down here actually. I can end it wherever I want. //. So let me take this out and this out. So you see that multi-line comment? Wherever it begins, wherever it ends, everything in between it is considered a comment. So let's see if I run it. So right now it's doing hello world and read key right here. If I press enter, now it's doing this read key. I got this read key waiting for me. So it skipped over everything. Cool. Oh, and let's see, we can also do, we don't have to just print out letters. We can put anything inside of a string. So I can make up, you know, some cartoon cussing here. So I mean, just any character that's on the keyboard, I can print it out. So it's going to print that. See, just like so. That's hard to see, but it's there. It looks good on my screen here, just not up there. Let's see, and we can also do spaces. Space is a character, okay? There's actually a character, if you look in the Unicode table or ASCII table, there's a value for space. It's not just emptiness, okay? So I could do something like this. Let's say, do this, copy paste. So let's say 1, 2, 3 spaces. I am 1, 2, 3. 1. All right. So look at that. You see how that looks right there? That's exactly how it's going to look on the printout. I can add spaces all day long. Okay. So however many spaces you put in, that's how many it's going to print out. Hint, there's a homework problem that uses that. We can also do things like we can use escape sequences. So let's see, one common escape sequence is /n, \n. Normally an n would mean to print out an n, right? But when I precede something with a backslash, that says that that something is no longer what it normally is. So \n means that an n is no longer just an n, it's a new line return. So what's going to happen here is you're not going to see /n. You're going to see this. It prints out hello space, and then it does a new line return, and then finishes printing the rest of the string. Okay? /n. It's called an escape sequence. /t is tab. /n and /t are the two most useful. We can also, we can do these all day long too. So let's just put, if I do let's do 3 in a row. It's going to do 3 new line returns. Okay? It's not pretty, it's just meant to be an example. So I got 3 /n's in a row there. You see it? Blind woman. Hey, you see it?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
It's really hard.
Yeah. But everybody sees the /n's, /n. Sweet. Well, I think that about covers it for this assignment. Anybody have any questions? Excellent. We have a little bit of time left. If you want to work on, I did print the exercises out for this one since our internet connection's down. Who knows when it'll be back up. And you're welcome to work on this now or whenever you got. I think they're due next Friday. So you got some time. And these cover all the things I talked about already. These exercises are very simple. So, you're gonna use Visual Studio. For every exercise, you're probably gonna want to create a new project. Well, technically you don't have to, but you may want to. If you have any questions about that, I'll just show you individually. What you're gonna do is when you finish, one exercise, you wanna copy your source code. And I mean all your source code. So like if I come in here, so that's my source code, right? If I just hold down Control and then press A, so Control A is what? Seriously? Nobody knows? Select all. All right, I was just being quiet. So select all, right? I want you to select all that, and you'll put it in a Word file, okay? So when you finish an exercise, just go ahead and copy that and paste it in your Word file, okay? And I've given you an example document in Moodle. I know you can't see it now, but it shows you the format, how I want things laid out, okay? But that's basically it. That's what you're going to do. All right, so Control A to select all that. What's the key sequence to paste it? Control V, good. Yeah, you should memorize all those. All right, any other questions? Great, it's been fun. You're welcome to do whatever you want now. I'll be here for 15 more minutes. Or 10.